Hopefully most everybody's back. Yeah, it's 1 minute after 1:45. We'll just go
Hi,
ahead and get
John.
started.
Thank you.
All right,
Hold
thank you.
on. Trying to, I'm
All
trying
right,
to,
let's go. We can be a little looser here, and we got little more well, not hands-on stuff, but action type of stuff. But you do have to tolerate my PowerPoint presentation to kind of present the topic. We're going to deepen and broaden some of the things that we brought up this morning. And I really appreciate Lyle's input on that. So basically, first thing, well, we're going to look at the ideal trend analysis. We're going to look at the acceptable methods and some of the pluses and minuses, each of those very briefly. Again, this is a deepening and a widening, but it's still not deep and wide enough to really take care of us in the future. It's going to take more than that. Then we'll present what's probably the ideal method. I will do let's see. I'm going to show you what I call the 9-second method of doing a time analysis. You get the data in, it'll run you a time adjustment in 9 seconds, including the graph. Then I'll have Craig come on and do a little presentation on download. There's still some people here, I'm sure, have never done a download, but that's a starting point. That is the future, no matter what. Craig is also, in my opinion, probably one of the top experts in the country on the different MLSs and the different problems and all that. The founder of the Relocation Appraisers Group. And he will also later on at the end of the presentation, at the 2 hours, he'll do an artificial intelligence piece on time adjustments. Before him, Kyle Paquin will do something. And then I guess I'm doing a little bit on I'm doing a piece on how to do time adjustments using Excel, which is what I taught for years, but no longer teach because it's so much easier using R and RStudio. Okay, so let's look at the ideal trend analysis first. And market conditions, time adjustment, trend analysis, as far as I'm concerned, it's all the same thing. There's arguments you can get into them. I think they're pointless. The predictor variable is time. So time adjustment is just as good as a market conditions adjustment in terms of terminology. I have no problem with that at all. So let's look at the optimized method. What would be the ideal trend analysis? Well, and we're reflecting back on everything we learned in the last hour with Lyle and the GSE guidelines. What USPAP requires is what we learned as appraisers in our licensing. So it shows the facts, the location, the time, and the price, the date of the contract, or the closing date. It shows the market area and any outliers. An outlier is something that doesn't seem to fit. Fannie Freddie actually have a different terminology for that, but it's the same thing. Something that doesn't seem to fit. A computer program does not do well at handling outliers, not even artificial intelligence. It's still one of the things that requires human input and an explanation of, or maybe a confirming phone call. The optimized method would draw attention to any changes in the trend, help your eyes see the trend change. And it would calculate the defined adjustment, give us a number, not just a vague higher, lower level type of thing. That was great 30, 40 years ago. It's not great today. In fact, that's why it's going away with the new UAD, the new UAR, the online dashboard version. Okay, so market condition trend time adjustment, optimized method. Yes, this is a repeat. Well, okay, it would be fact-based, accurate. It would be easy to do and repeatable, and it would be visual. The power of the human brain, humans are very good at visualization stuff. So anytime you can, their guideline says an illustration. In my mind, that means graph or a map or a table. Graphs are the best. Should be easy to tweak and easy to explain. It should be as self-explanatory as possible. And hopefully, from our point of view as appraisers, it would be bulletproof. Once you're done, it's done. And if the underwriter says, well, why didn't you do that? You say, well, it's on page 2, line 37. And you don't have to explain it a second time. Bulletproof versus reconsiderations. And of course, it would meet USPAP standards as well as particular GSE requirements and bank requirements. Here's what I consider to be the ideal solution. You know, I've got to say at this point, what are my qualifications? I mentioned that I've written a couple of journal articles on this. I have extensive graduate level education in economics, econometrics, statistics, even math. I hated it. I flunked calculus 3 times before I finally got it, but I stuck with it. I have a strong background in this. I've been teaching price indexing, time adjustments for close to 20 years. I used them in my office for 25, 30 years when I had an office full of people. We did this method. They never came back. They were fully self-explanatory. I only had, over the years, I only had 2 come back, and that was for the funny stories that were totally irrelevant. But here's the deal. This black line would be what Fannie Freddie call the overall trend for the neighborhood. Well, that shows an upward, but the comps might be in this area here. They're more recent. And look, that market has changed. The red line, that's a polynomial curve that helps our eyes see the trend change. Also, when there's a trend change, there's usually kind of a gap. Can you see this, the slowdown in the market right here? Craig Gilbert and I both independently discovered this. It hit us in the face. Like every time there's a change in the market trend, you're going to get a gap like this. It just jumps out at you, but you got to train your brain to ask that question. Okay, so if the black line is the overall trend, what's the trend for your market analysis? Probably cut off the data right about there. And now the green line becomes your trend line for actual time adjustments. Again, time on the x-axis down here and sale price on the y-axis there. I need to throw this caution out there because a number of people have tried to monetize these methods and say, okay, gee, for $29.95, you can buy our product and solve all your problems. It's good for time adjustments, the living area. They make all kinds of promises, just pay them. And I got to put this caution out there for you and for them. The simple regression that we teach for time adjustments is not appropriate for almost any other adjustment. It absolutely is not. Time series analysis is very different from the other ones. I had a whole PhD level class dedicated to time adjustment, to time series analysis. It's very different. And the time series analysis was included in part of several of my other classes. I took 2 classes a year, mostly graduate level, for about 16 years, actually. So the caution is a simple regression model is for that we use for market analysis is almost, I will say, always not suited for other adjustments, except in special cases. Just so don't do it. Don't trust it. Somebody tries to sell you that, they're just getting your money. Stats, graph, data science. For one class, we applied modeling decisions to enable cases where it might be useful. We do try to teach those cases where you're going to get a biased result, analytically biased result, but it's still useful. That requires your expert knowledge. But once you get it, boy, is it useful. Here's a 7-point checklist. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time. If you're a reviewer or underwriter, here's basically the things you can actually checklist. And here's 5 more points that are more general. They require judgment as a reviewer, appraiser, underwriter. So that'll be it. I'll leave that up there for about 5 more seconds if you want a picture of it. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for the replay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll come back to it if you absolutely need to. Okay, so here's a statement of purpose for Valuemetrics, George Dell. Evidence-based valuation is devoted to applying modern analytical tools, that's data and computer power and visualization, through ethical, objective, and clearly communicated professional services. I believe there's a bright future for those of us who take the time to move into the future. I'd like to do my 9-second time adjustment thing. I want to show you how fast it is, how easy it is. The decisions that you have to make before you use this model is how far back do you go, the time span, to look for any trend changes, and deal with any outliers, data that are just way out of range. The tools we use here are R, which is the underlying analytics statistical software. We never actually deal with that. That's the foundation underneath. RStudio is the user interface you'll see right now. Quarto is a package that helps RStudio write. It's basically a report writer type of software. Tidyverse is for analytics. It's perfect for the type of data we appraisers use, rectangular data, columns and rows like a spreadsheet. And ggplot2, which is a graphs package. Each of these independently would cost you a pile of money. They're free, they're open source. We give them to you when you sign up for the class. Or you can just go get them. They're free. You don't have to come into my class to get them. Okay, time and evidence-based valuation. Market analysis is the core of evidence-based valuation, as opposed to judgment or opinion-based valuation. Here's our little moniker. We measure markets. We don't compare comps. That's the way to mentally think about this. We measure markets. Evidence-based valuation is data-centric instead of opinion-centric or judgment-centric. It requires a new, better appraiser competence. Most of what we've been taught is 60, 80, almost 100 years old. Very little change in our education, and yet things have changed so dramatically in the last 5, 10, 20 years. Even the last couple of years, even in the last year with artificial intelligence stuff. It has to do with facts, logic, repeatability, and auditability. Those are words I first heard from Lyle about 5 years ago. Community of Asset Analysts. Everybody you heard here that's participated is a member of the Community of Asset Analysts, the CAA. We're close to 300 members. You're welcome to, by the way, we have a conference coming up next month in Las Vegas. It's 2 days. You can find the information on my website. Non-members are welcome to come. It's 2 days of presentations. 4 hours of CE is available, which is R for Excel Experts is the name of that one. Okay, let's just go on here. Basically, it's appraisers helping appraisers. I stole that from Steve Smith and his National Appraisers Forum. Thank you, Steve. It's appraisers helping appraisers. More helpful group than I've ever run into in my life. A clear path to competence in this area. Understand the new market analysis requirements. Well, we've got an hour of that under a belt. We'll get a little bit more here in the next hour or two. Become aware of time series theory. Understanding the theory underneath it is probably more important than learning which buttons to push. How to get started, change your attitude, or decide you want to survive in the changes that are coming anyway, and how to make it easy, make your life easier and more gratifying rather than grumbling about it. The statistics for time series analysis is simple, it's straightforward, simple regression. It means one predictor variable, time. And there's 3 or 4 decisions you make along the way. Once you understand what those 3 or 4 decisions are, it's easy. Graphs, because humans are really good at that. They're self-explanatory. And explanations need to be facts and logic based. So that's stats, graphs, and data science. The ideal goal for a method. It should meet each and every requirement of USPAP, of the GSCs that we've seen, expectations of regulate. Well, there's some typos in it. Close your eyes, do not look at my typos. 2 in 1 sentence, wonderful. The expectations of our users, why? Because USPAP says, our scope of work says we must meet the expectations of our clients. And one of our clients is Fannie Freddie. And it's USPAP enforceable in client expectations and regulations, of course. Ideal method should be fast, it should be complete, it should be reproducible, and bulletproof to the point that you will never get a request for reconsideration or anything of that kind. Believe me, I've done it for years of work. I had 8, 9 appraisers working for me. They never came back. I've been doing this for 25, 30 years. Scope of work rule. The type and extent of data researched. What we teach is the 5 dimensions, the property type and rights, cash equivalent basically, the time span, how far back you go, the location, and the features of preference, like what color door do you prefer. And the results require support by relevant evidence and logic. Relevant. So the competitive data is the most relevant. if you can get it, and if you got 8 or 9 data points at least. Use map, some more. Scope of work says disclose in the report the extent to which the property is identified, the property is inspected, the type and extent of data researched, and analysis applied. Given to how cheap today memory is in delivery and the electronic methods we'll be using in the future for Fannie Mae reports can be entirely electronic dashboards. Supplying all 30 of the sales you considered your research is simply not a problem. Just give it to them. Let them deal with it. So disclosing the report, disclose the market segment identified. How much to what extent you inspected this market segment. Maybe you've been in that neighborhood 20, 30 times before. Just say so. I'm very familiar with this neighborhood, with this market segment location. The type and extent of market data researched. I researched in this area, this far back, for this property type, cash equivalent sales, 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom houses, at least 1,500 square feet or larger. If there's any commercial appraisers on here, I'm going to use nothing but residential examples, but just substitute the word cap rate or GIM, whatever you want to, for every time I say living area. It's the tools and the methods are identical. They're simply no different for whatever type of property it is. And you disclose in the report the type and extent of the analyses applied. And if you get this part right, then you've got a long ways. Reporting for time adjustments, time series analysis is straightforward. What are the parameters of the data researched? The same type of thinking you've been using for years. This location, this far back in time, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 1,200 square feet to 1,800 square feet with small lots, whatever it is, just identify those parameters. How did you handle something that just plain didn't fit? Maybe you know immediately, and once in a great while, that's the one that really is important to you. That's a judgment decision on you, the expert. And notice any trend changes, like in that graph I just showed you, where it went up and then went down. And what is the adjustment for each day going back for each comparable? Remember, on the x-axis is time measured in days. On the y-axis is a price measured in dollars. So it's dollars per day. If you insist on needing a percentage adjustment, you just divide. It's not a big deal. FHFA mentioned 3 common methods for market analysis. Number 1 was group data. Basically use two groups of data that are similar properties and contrast, let's say, that group 9 months ago to the most recent month. And theoretically, the change from 9 months ago group to today's group will be a rough time adjustment for the comp that was 9 months ago. If you had a comp that was 14 months ago, now you need a group 14 months ago. So it's a little bit clumsy, but sometimes that's the best you can do. And you look, basically, you compare the mean or the median, the average of each of those groups. Very much like the 1004 MC did. One of the problems with the 1004 MC is that the groups were too clumpy. 3 months, 3 months, 6 months. Not only were they too wide, but they were uneven. 3, 3, and 6 does not give you mental ability to track the change over a year. And again, this is where I wrote both my journal articles on one was entitled Fallacies, Foibles, and Mistakes in Statistics for Appraising, something like that. This issue of, Simpson's paradox. Basically, that's something I had 3 times in my graduate courses in an upper division class in econometrics and stats. Basically, it's a paradox that when you group data and you had no real reason to group the data, it can give you the wrong answer and sometimes even the wrong direction. And I used to teach that as an example of a bad model. And if we have time today, I'll show you that. It'll take just a couple of minutes. Paired data is the second method that they suggest. It's comparing the same property before and after. You got a property that sold this month, and it also sold 5 months ago. And in theory, what you're supposed to pretend is that the property is identical from 5 months ago till today. What's different about something that sells twice in 1 year? Motivation. Usually it's a fixer-upper or an emergency sale. I don't think this method's very good, simply because we can pretend that it's the same property, but the motivation and the cash equivalency is almost always going to be way off. Also, you have to find something that matches the exact time period you're looking for 5 months ago. When are you going to find that? I tried that method. It was the first thing I tried years and years ago, and I had enough data to actually come to a conclusion, but it was painful to do. Just the math was painful. And the third method that the FHFA report did, it was their working paper. It came out in December. It's available online. It's worth the reading. It's about bias too, but there's some good stuff there. Basically, it's similar sales prices. It includes a scatter plot and a trend line, and it can be done in a per unit adjustment. The graph you saw was strictly contract sale prices, but you can also do that on dollars per square foot per day, and you gain accuracy. We talk about that in the class. It's just want to throw that out there so you're aware that as good as a method as this is, it can be improved on also. What's good about it is it deals with a particular competitive market segment. It helps you easily draws your eyes to the outliers. The math can't be challenged. It's least squares. You square all the deviations, add them up, and take the square root of that. It's math. It cannot be challenged. The only way you can be challenged as an appraiser is, did you pick the right data in the first place? That's a lot harder to challenge when you show all your data. It makes it almost impossible to beat up on you. And especially, it takes advantages of today's data, computer power, and your judgment.
Hey, George.
Yeah, let me finish this one line here. Consistent,
Okay.
It's understandable, it's reproducible, it's visual, and it's compliant with USPEP and GSC. Yes, is that Cindy?
Todd Hoffer is asking a question. Yeah, it's me.
Who was that?
It's me, Cindy.
Oh, who's asking the question?
Todd Hoffer.
Okay, Todd, go ahead.
He can't talk.
Oh, okay.
Why do you not use the price paid per square foot over time for time adjustment?
Did I just cover that? Yeah. The answer is yes, absolutely. Price per square foot per day is better than gross price. I often do it both ways and reconcile. Absolutely right on. Wonderful question. That's it. Okay. And of course, FHFA came up with a fourth method, or strategy they called it, that appraisers use, which is just simply avoid it and ignore it. Over the years, as low as 10-15% of appraisers actually did a time adjustment. Even when the market was hot, it only hit a peak of about half the appraisals even showed any time adjustment on any of the comps. GSEs talk a lot about acceptable methods. They're very loose about this. They're not very strict at all. Home price index. In fact, I found, well, hope Lyle hears this again. Home price index is not market segment based. And yet another place it says it's unacceptable if it's not based on the market segment. So I see actual conflict there in her instructions. But that's good that you can protect yourself either way you do that way, or you can be accused either way. Seldom do home price indexes actually match your competitive market. Statistical is one of the methods that was in that report. That's kind of a broad thing. It's like, well, which kind of a car do you need? Well, just a car will do. Anything with four wheels. Well, that's really broad. It's not a specific method. And most people, most of us think about inferential statistics, which means random samples, and we appraisers don't do no random samples. And they said modeling is okay too. Another very, very broad word. Well, what is modeling? It's a pot full of different ways of approaching a problem. They're really trying to avoid telling us exactly how to do this, but simply the way Lyle put it, I really like that. We're on the path to improving. But it does involve judgment and competence, which method to use, which is where we're going to go here with the next hour and a half of this class. And then finally, paired sales, which is the same arguments that FHFA talked about. The problem with that is parallel timing is difficult, and unchanged similarity is really rare. And then, of course, the guidelines, Fannie Freddie guidelines says anything else is acceptable that's generally acceptable. So very, very broad. So you're kind of safe there. My question is, who decides what is commonly acceptable? It must be Craig Gilbert. He's an expert on acceptability. Thank you for letting me pick on you. All right. I did something silly. This Copilot, which is on if you use Microsoft products, I said, what the heck? Let me ask Copilot, how do you calculate a time adjustment? So here's what it answered to me. This is your first exposure to artificial intelligence. You get two more exposures before we're done here. Here's a step-by-step guide. Identify the time period. Okay. Collect market data. Okay. Analyze the trends. Makes sense. That sounds good. They could be going up, down, look for patterns. That makes sense. Calculate the adjustment rate. Now here it fell back on this old percentage thinking. You know, nowhere with any of our other adjustments do we think in percentages. Do you think about your dollars per square, your size adjustment, your living area adjustment? Well, this house is 17% larger than this one. We don't think that way. Why are we thinking about it with time? Because our brains have been calculated with percentages, with interest rates, with cap rates. Not relevant. You don't need that unless somebody asks you for it. So this is one place where the Copilot fell back on that because our literature is replete with that. Apply the adjustment. That makes sense. And document the analysis. So Copilot, that's what they said. Given what's out there in the world from all the internet postings that have been done over the years, that's the answer it came up with. Not bad. Not too far off. For lenders and reviewers, here's what this is a kind of a short summary of the guidelines, and we'll move on to other topics. Well, it's important to remember they do require two different trends. One they call the overall trend, which is the front of the form. I think it's really subjective. Is the market going upward or downward or stable? Those words are created 50 years ago when we had no data to calculate on. It's restricted to the neighborhood. Don't go outside of the neighborhood. It says that specifically. Calculate the percentage, then back to the dollar adjustment. The second trend is on the back of the form, which is the competitive market segment. Curve fit to any trend changes, estimate the percent multipliers, and apply the dollars per day times the number of days back. How many days back was the comp? If it was 100 days back, you just multiply times 100. Easy. But they do not require any specific method. Optimized, which is what we try to teach, realizing that you can't use it every time. Do a simple regression line for both the overall, just the neighborhood, and for the competitive market segment. Do it twice. It's not that hard. If you use our RStudio code like we do, you just got to change the date, basically, and sort by the data. So it's inside the neighborhood. It's a pain, but it's not that hard. So dealing with the data selection, competitive market only, control for similarity, living area, competitive, leave the urgent sales out of it, lot size, number of bedrooms, swimming pool or no swimming pool. That's called moderating the data. Moderating so it's close to what you're looking for, so it's close to the subject property for similarity. You want to take your time span back past what you think is going to be the oldest comparable. Just slightly back, 20, 30% further back in time, just to bracket it in time. And for your competitive segment, you want to show your trend lines, calculate the simple regression coefficients. That's real easy. You don't have to get out pencil and paper. You push a button. And apply dollars per day times the number of days back. Getting the right data is important. Download, here's the overall process that we teach for any method of time series analysis or any kind of appraisal. Very similar to what you've always done, but now we're focused on getting and document all the data we've used so that they can't challenge us on it. They can't say, why didn't you use this comp? You say, well, it's right there. It's number 13 on my list that I sent you. So you download all the sales you might ever need. Go back at least 12 months because they require that for that overall rate. The GSEs do. Control or moderate for your living area, your bedroom count, size of the lot, swimming pool, whatever. That's controlling or moderating. The right word is actually moderate because you're trying to reduce the effect of outliers and weird stuff. Try to get to 8 to 10 sales, and in the class we should teach you logical ways of how to do that, to expand the data set so you get at least 8, 10, 12. But that's about all you need for a trend analysis, actually. Apply one of the acceptable methods, matching your competence. Of course, everybody that's going to be here is going to be an expert on this stuff, I hope. Summarize your supporting evidence, describe all your data sources, your tools, your techniques you used, and there was a number 4. And with that, I'm done. And Craig, if you will go ahead and give us a short presentation. I think we gave you, about 10 minutes or so, 10, 12 minutes to downloading is important. No matter, your MLS is not going to match Craig's probably, but if there's any questions, feel free to ask Craig about your specific MLS, although we may have to put that off until after the class is over with. So thank you, Craig. Go ahead, and it's your turn.
Audio's off. Okay, I'm on. So before I get to what I was going to do, George, I just thought of something while Lyle was speaking that I would like to add. Can you guys see this form here? This is a worldwide ERC appraisal report form. This was one that myself and several other appraisers developed in 2000 and released in 2010 for the ERC. This entire page is on market analysis, supporting adjustments, and you can read all through the instructions here, but everybody has this form. If you have appraisal software, it's called the ERC or WERC appraisal summary report. And go to page 4. This is page 4 that I have here. This is actually a real appraisal I had done recently. Up in this top section, I've given the detailed parameters of my search criteria. What does that mean? If anybody USA puts that same criteria in on a research using the same database, they'll come up with exactly the same conclusions as I did. And that's the reproducibility that's been talked about by George and Lyle. Anyway, there's quite a bit in here. This is a real one. I'm not going to go through it because of time element, but I just wanted to point it out. This is not bad if you've never done market analysis. Pull out page 4 and look at the items that you think make sense to you to work with. So anyway, that is that. And in the end, we come to a conclusion as to whether the market is increasing, decreasing, or stable. One thing we added that you won't see anywhere is the term unstable. And this is where a market, we can't really tell what it's doing. It goes up, down, whatever. So that's the unstable that we added at the time. So anyway, page 4, WERC, should help you out a little bit. There's also a book by from the WERC that explains all this. So I'm going to move on now to MLS. Can you guys see the form? Yes?
You're still on the ERC.
Okay. Why is that?
Click the green button and then click
Yeah.
on
Okay.
where you're going.
Okay. Is it up?
You got it.
Got it. Sorry about that. So I am using Matrix MLS, which is with CRMLS, which is basically all of California, or at least all of Southern California. And it's aligned, the various MLSs are aligned together and share their data within Matrix. Some of you will have Flex, some have Paragon, and there's some others also. They all probably basically work about the same way. I will show Matrix. If you can't figure it out within your own MLS, call tech support, tell them what you want to do, and they'll walk you through it and you'll have it mastered in 5 minutes. So I'm going to show how to set up a custom export within MLS. Within Matrix, you're going to go up here, right-hand corner where your name is. Do a right click on that. I'm sorry, click on it. And you're going to get settings. Go to settings, click that. These are your various options that you can do customization on. I've got custom displays, speed bars, and so forth. The one we're going to concentrate on is custom exports. How do I set up an export? Manage custom exports. So if I want to start brand new, I'm going to see a page that looks like this, and I will say add export. Now I have an option to put all data items over into this export field. I don't normally do it, but I'll just show you how to do it. You're gonna select all these, add. So now everything on the left-hand side is now on the right-hand side. I'm going to remove those just because it's too much for now. And what will we normally do? We would normally put, let's say, price. I'm going to show you how to search for the items here. So down here in search, let's say I go price. There's all these different prices I can do. I can pick. I'll go with close price. I could also put original list price, and so forth. Price per square foot. I'll go ahead and add it for now. What else do I need? I'm going to need a date. So right now, what are the two things we need for price indexing? Got to have a sell price and a sell date. So I'm going to type in the word date. And I get all these options on date. The one I just marked is purchase contract. This is the one that Lyle was saying we should be measuring from. You can actually measure from close date or pending date. With the relocation assignments we do, everything is from the purchase contract date. One thing I'll mention on relocation, I've been doing those since the early 80s, actually since the 70s. We've always been focusing on market conditions and so forth. But we also do market forecasting into the future. I've had pending sales that haven't even closed yet, where I make a plus market conditions adjustment, because in the last 45 days, while it's been under contract, it's gone up 2%. Then on top of that, add a market forecast. In the end, whatever value we report, which is actually called anticipated sell price, accuracy is demanded, accuracy is required. If you're not accurate, you'll be removed from the list. They keep stats. They compare what you appraised it at and what it sells for. So these are all that's why we focus on little details like this. I could also add close date. In fact, I should add close date. And let me go back to pending date, purchase contract. Your MLS may call it something different, maybe pending date or something like that. Sometimes it's a little confusing, but in one place it'll show purchase contract date and somewhere else will show pending date. So you just have to know the nuances of your MLS. So for now, I'm just going to pick these. I'm not going to pick address and days on market and so forth as an illustration. The next thing we have to do is we have to name it. So up here, export name, let's call it price indexing. One more thing or two more things. Down here, you need to name it. You need to, so the columns will be named. You can either go with a label or a name. They both work. The one that's most critical is a separator. You have CSV, which is comma separated value, and you also have tab delimited values. You always want to click comma because we're going to be using CSV files. So once we have selected our export fields, we have picked a name or a label, comma CSV. We name it, and then we're going to hit save. I'm not going to save this one because I've already got some saved, but that's once I save it, it saves it into price indexing. It's going to cancel this. Okay. Are there any questions so far? Or should we wait till the end? Wait till the end. Okay.
Yeah. Well, if you
Okay,
got
Sean.
any short questions, would be fine, but let's wait to the end for anything.
Okay, yeah, put your questions into the chat and then we'll get those taken care of at the end. And as George mentioned, later after Kyle, I will also give a presentation on using Julius, which is an AI for doing what we're talking about right now as an option. There's not one option, there's many options, and it's one that I've been working on lately. So I recently did a search. I'm going to open that up. Now, what matters is the search criteria. This is the competing market segment. If you look at that ERC form on page 4, you're going to see that term, competing market segment. That's what we've always called it. It is not the properties necessarily in the neighborhood. And the way we were taught on this, because I'm also a broker, is what other properties might a buyer consider besides this one? Well, there's a subdivision, 2 subdivisions over that is very comparable, built at the same time, same builder, similar square footage, and so forth. So this goes back to, again, George and Lyle about the competing market, which is where we want to measure our price index to use for market conditions adjustments. So in this particular case, I have I've got a subject property that is it's in this county of Riverside. It's in Moreno Valley. It's a detached single family residence. It has 1,400 square feet of living area, 3 bedrooms plus an office, 2 bathrooms, a 2-car garage, and 6,000 square feet living area. It's a large area of subdivisions, but this works anywhere, even with less data. So what matters? Selecting properties that are competing with the subject. So I went with 3 to 4 bedrooms because we have 3 plus an office. It could be a 4-bedroom. 2 bathrooms. I don't want 2.5, 3, 3.5. I'm going to try to narrow it down as tight as I can. Living area between 1,200 and 1,600. We're at 1,400, so I'm plus or minus 200. Lot size 5 to 10. I could have gone 5 to 7,500, and that's where our judgment comes in. I've already got the county, Riverside. I've got the city, Moreno Valley. I'm going back here, 1 year closed. I selected single family residence right there. And moving on down, a couple things. With Matrix, I added all these. These were not in the search, the original search. So if you want to add fields, they're right there, add, remove fields. Once you've added them, you've got them forever, and then you can use them like what I'm doing right now. I wanted a year built in there. So I'm going 1984, so I'm splitting it. I want 1 story only. I don't want 2, 3-story homes. I just want properties that are like the subject, and I want those with a 2-car garage. So I've kind of named properties that are, any of these could almost be comparables for your subject, other than maybe they're too far. But our purpose right now is to develop a market index or time series analysis. Now, going back a year, I've got a whole bunch, 192. Sometimes I'll have 10, sometimes I'll have 20. This particular area has a bunch. I did not narrow it down to a really tight area. I just kind of left it open a little bit. This is not a real one. This is just a sample of how to do it, of how you do it. I hit a map real quick. So these are the properties in question, 192. Go back to results. Okay. Now we're at a point, I'll kind of scan through these. You know, I'll look at the square footages, bedrooms, baths, and so forth. I did not strip out REOs and foreclosures and so forth. Normally I would do that unless that was the market. Back in the 08, 09, 11, and so forth, that was the market. So if you stripped out REOs and foreclosures and short sales, you'd have nothing. You'd have 10% of the sales. There's a probate in there. I could probably leave that. Most are actually market sales. They just call it that because there's a trust. Somebody died. So now I'm going to export these. And for those of you who do this all the time, this is old hat. So this is for someone who's never done it before. What's critical is you don't want to just click this top box right here, because you're only going to get, in this case, 100. You're not going to get all 192. So don't click the box there. Click all. If you click all, you get all 192. Now, that may sound it's not that much different. But if I have my agent one line set up at 10 per page, you can see it's a major difference. I either get 10 or I get 192. But right now I've got them all. I'm going to export these into any database. I will go into Excel. You can use Access, and there's others also. If you can put a CSV file in it, you can use it. It doesn't have to go to Excel. I call it a placeholder. So one more thing. Down here at the bottom are my criteria that we went over. It's a single family. It closed from one of whatever 24 to present and so forth. 1,200 to 1,600 square feet right here. You can use a cutter, cut and paste. I will cut that out and paste it into my appraisal report. These are my search criteria. You saw that ERC report where I gave an example. I named all, I gave a list of my criteria. This is doing the same thing. And again, a reviewer anywhere USA, they go into your database, they put in this criteria, they will get exactly what you got. And so they can follow your rationale. One more thing is before I go to export, I'll hit stats real quick right here, tabular, there we go. And for all the properties, I get the min, the max, an average, a median on price, lot size, living area. See, our average is 1407. Our median is 1397. Our subject property is 1,400 square feet. So these are looking pretty good. You got your builts here, and the median and average in 1984, which is exactly equal to the subject. The other thing I'll point out that's really important to take a quick look at is the sell price list price ratio. The minimum was 86%. Pass that for a second. The maximum was 113%. Somebody paid 13% over the list price. The average was 102, as you can see there, and the median was 101. If you go back a couple of years, these were higher. If I went back a couple of years and did it, I'd see 104, 106, 110, 120. So that's another thing you can do with the data. So anyway, we're going to go back to where I was. Come down here. I've already selected all of them, as I mentioned earlier. I'm going to export. This is where you select the export that you named. What'd you name it? Remember, I did not save it because I've got a whole bunch already. I didn't want to mix them up. which I always end up doing. So on this particular one, I'm going to go back for a second. I have 10 column. That's one of them I do if I just want certain information on indexing. I have one I call more data. I didn't tell how many columns it is. Maybe it's 40 or 50. So I'm going to go with more data. And let's say I'm not sure what it is. I can hit Edit Custom Export, and it tells me all my fields right here. I may want to take one out. I may want to put one in, but I can kind of do it on the fly. I'm going to cancel that because I'm okay with it. So, oops, got to change this back to the one I want, which was, oops, Dell Gilbert, like that. What does your name always go first, George?
It's early in the alphabet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go more data. Sorry. Export. Here it is. Can you guys see the export up here to downloads? All I have to do is click this. And can you see, you cannot see the file. Fix that.
Well, that's a perfect segue anyway, because it'll look like a spreadsheet. We all know that.
Yeah, it looks, I'm gonna close it out. I'm gonna close that one out because it doesn't matter. But I do want to show, I want to show something. Oops. What do I want to show?
We need to
So,
move, Greg.
yeah. Okay, here we go. So here's my price indexing. I don't know if you can see it again. Hang on.
No,
I know. Hang on.
it's your picture.
Okay. You see it now?
Yes.
Okay. The one thing I did do, this is one I'd already saved with the same search, is I went up here to insert and I turned it into a table, which adds these items here at the top, which are kind of useful if you want to change the order, like my close date and so forth. Do I want to go oldest to newest, newest to oldest, and so forth? So anyway, that is that. These are all now ready for a analysis. These will get imported into either Excel or numeric or R or AI. There's multiple AIs that are available. I've tested many of them. Can I show one example, George, of an Excel?
Well, that's what I'm going to do next.
Let me just, this will take like 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. Don't count.
6, 5,
Count slower.
4, 3, 2.
Never mind. Okay, I'm not going to do it.
Huh.
I
You'll have another chance at the
I didn't
end.
have, yeah, it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and close that out.
Thank you very much.
Don't save. Okay.
And those of you who don't know Craig, he's really one of the top people in the country as far as I'm concerned on MLS. He works with realty boards and he's a realtor himself. So thank you very much, Craig. Where we're going right now is I want to show you, I meant to do it earlier, the 9-second version of doing this in R and RStudio, the quickie version. Let me get it up here. Thank you again, Craig. This is an example of RStudio. Notice you have the 4 panes, which takes advantage of the high resolution, huge monitors that we have now that we took for granted. We didn't have 10 years ago. What I've got up here is this one example. This is the SGD's third simplest demo. It's in QMD, which is Quarto, which is a package that's good for reporting. And you get a copy of this if you come to the class. Basically, it's about market conditions. It's a basic, simple one about running code. This is just text. So it's just going to print out the text. Each one of these gray boxes is a line of code. And I'll go over that a little bit in just a few minutes. But basically what I'm going to do here, this code is totally reusable. You don't need to write it. You don't need to be a computer programmer. You just need to take my code or John's code or Craig's code and use it. What I'm going to do now is push this button up here that says render. And when I push that, it will run all that code and give me a time adjustment on the Eagle SFR appraisal. So I'm going to push the render button and it'll calculate down here in just about 2 seconds, I hope. There it goes. It creates a table like this for me, which will disappear in just a second. And then it gives me this result. Well, let me see. Shoot. I should have fixed this. This acts differently in, bear with me. It acts differently when we're online. There we go. Okay. So this is the result that took 9 seconds. That's why I call it the 9-second result. This repeats the words that I typed, basically instructions to you. It created this graph with this label on there. The blue line is this simple regression. The red line is the third order polynomial, helps our eyes see changes in the market. You say, well, why is that good trending up right there? Well, you got these two outliers here that are influential outliers. They're pulling that graph up. So now I know why. Now I look at this, I say, it looks like the red line's laying on top of the blue line. So it's probably a good indicator of time adjustment. That's my conclusion. And down here, I hope you can see that. My time adjustment is $37 per day downward. And all that was 9 seconds. The hard part about this is what Craig just did, getting the data right. Organizing the data is 80% of the issue, but once you're there, plug it in, your field names are right. This is reusable for the rest of your career, and it's 9 seconds, and it's easy to explain. Okay, now I want to pick up where Craig left off and do in Excel. Where is it? I hope I didn't get rid of that. Oh, shoot. Well, bear with me. Okay. There it is. Okay, there's my spreadsheet. I used to do pretty colors for the headers up here, but when we did it in when I taught the class in Excel and in an open source software called Numeric. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to go through how do you do that same thing that I just did in 9 seconds in Excel. It's a little more complex, but it can be done. I'm going to grab these two columns, which is the date of the sale and the sale price. I'm going to go across there. I held the mouse button down. Then I'm going to push Control Shift down arrow, and it should go all the way down to the bottom of those columns, which is what it did. See, it went all the way to the bottom and stopped. Let me go back up to the top. And now I want to create a graph. So I'm going to click on this tab up here called Insert. And what do I want to insert? What do we want is a chart. Bill Gates, for some reason, calls graphs charts. There's a scatter plot that we want. I'm going to click on that. And where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, now it's asking what type of a scatter plot. This is the one I want there, so I'll click on that. And sure enough, there it is. I can make it bigger. Now, to work with this is the neighborhood. Notice that there's a huge price range here from 2.5 million down to 500,000. We do want to filter that down to the competitive market segment. But that's not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is for you to see how this is done in Excel. So if we want to do a trend line on this, I'm going to go up here to this plus button. It says chart elements to add, remove. I'm going to click on that. Want to add a trend line, so click on that. And I want a linear, so click on that. And sure enough, it's there. It's kind of hard to see. So let's go back here to more options. And we can, there's the paint bucket. So let's make it a solid line. I'm going to click on the solid line there. And it's red. That's fine. It's kind of hard to see. Let's make it fatter. Like about like that. And I think that's okay. Now I'll hit enter. Didn't work. What did I do wrong? Well, okay, you get the point. The trend line is there. And we want to add something else to that. We need the actual formula behind that line. So, what do we want? What am I doing wrong? I used to use this all the time. I just don't remember anymore.
George, I think if you click on the trend line, you have the right arrow option.
Oh
Click
yeah,
that
thank
right
you.
arrow option.
Of course. Yeah, it's hidden down here. More options. Or no, I shouldn't have done that, should I? Let me back up. Trend line.
That's, yeah, do it again. More options.
More options.
And your trend line options are now over on the right. But you think if you click the bars, it shows up.
I'm looking for the formula, John.
Yeah, click the bars up at the top. You have the paint bucket list checked right now. Click the
Oh, the
bars.
bar. Oh, thank you. Of course.
There you go.
Of course, there it is. Okay. By the way, this is your choice to add that third order polynomial, but we're not going to do that right now. Down here at the bottom is this button here was display the equation on the chart. That's the next step. And I don't know why they did this. It shows it right on top of the line where you can barely see it. It's small fonts. So now I'm going to right click on the box and edit the text and make it bigger. Well, you get the idea. This is really all I want to show you. You make the font bigger. You can fiddle with it, make the background prettier. But that's basically it. There's your formula. And look at that, $37.40 per day is your downward time adjustment. Same answer we got elsewhere. So that's how you do it in Excel. We will teach in the class. We do teach that at least one more time, but using R, the real analysis software today, once you program it once, it's good forever. You just don't mess with it. Okay. I would like to do one more thing in R since we're talking about that. So let's go ahead and push back to that and go a little more deeply into how we do all this in RStudio. Again, the 4 panes is RStudio. R is the underlying statistical software. You don't ever have to work with that. Now I'm going to go to this student R exercise 2, which is we use in the class some of the time. This is a lot longer. Let me show you how much stuff there is here. I'll go through it very quickly, not for you to learn. You're not going to be an expert or even have a sense of what's going on here. Well, that's really all I want you to do is get a sense of, look for the process, not for the code. I will tell you a couple of things here. When you see these hash marks, that tells RStudio that this is for humans only. The computer's going to ignore it. It's just me talking to you. All of this stuff is me talking to you. This line here is I'm putting into the library of this appraisal assignment, Tidyverse package, which is the analysis software we use. It's really very good for appraisals. It's based on rectangular data. You work directly with the columns and fields like in a spreadsheet without having to do all that extend select stuff that I went through. Just so much easier. It matches our thinking process. We put into the library the GG themes, which is different ways of making graphs pretty. So I'm going to put my cursor there. I'm hitting Control Enter. It'll run that line of code. See the cursor went down to line 13. Now I'm going to push Control Enter again. It'll run that line of code. And then it'll go to this line of code next time I do Control Enter. ggplot is a graphics package. I tell it I want the data from the Eagle SFR appraisal. I want the aesthetics, AES aesthetics, or which is the picture of aesthetics is picture of the sale date and the sale price. That's what I want. And I want you to create a graph called geom point, which is a scatter plot. I'll run this line of code right now. I'll put the cursor anywhere on that line. This is actually much more complex than this is for learning purposes, not for doing purposes. I'll hit Control Enter again, and there's my scatter plot. How long did that take? About 4/10 of a second. That's the same graph you saw before. So let me continue on. Without explaining this code, I'll explain it as we go, but the one thing we're going to do is we're going to add a first order polynomial line to it, and we're going to make it blue. I'll put the cursor on line 19, and there's a line that quick. You say, oh, George, what an ugly color. I hate that color blue. Those lines should be a nice color. So you need to know enough about this code to change blue to red. Run that code again, and there's the red line. And I can go back to blue just as quick and just as easy. Now I want to add a nicer theme because we've loaded the themes. So I like the theme from The Economist magazine. The Economist magazine is well known for its good graphs. I'll put the cursor back on line, any of those lines, and there's the prettier graph. Now I want to add a third order polynomial. That's a modeling decision. We suggest always use a third order polynomial. Line 30 was the straight line. See the one here? That means it's a straight line. Third order polynomial allows the graph to go up, down, up, or up, down, up. Then I'm going to run this code all over again. And there's my third order polynomial. It's the same thing you saw in Excel a few minutes ago. And you go, wait a minute, I want to do more analysis on this. What are my field names in Eagle SFR, like Craig just downloaded for an appraisal? I'll run that line. I'll get the field names. Look in the bottom left-hand pane as I do this. There's my field names, that quick. All I have to do is move my eyes, and there they are. Now I'm going to create the competitive market segment. I'm using the filter command from Tidyverse from the Eagle SFR data set. I want to moderate or control by square foot of building between 1,200 square feet and 1,900 square feet. I hit Control Enter, and it's given me a new variable called CMS. It ran it down here. So this is the computer telling me, here's what I did. Here's what you told me to do, and I did it. But up here, keeps track of everything we do. Now it's telling me I've got a new data frame, new variable called CMS. 52 observations, 22 variables. Let's go on. Where did I leave off? I'll just run it again very quickly. There's my CMS. Now I want to, oh yeah, let's plot the sales from the CMS. I'm not going to talk about the code anymore. Just listen to the process. There's the CMS sales. Notice that it decided that I didn't need to go down to 0 here. Good appraisal practice, how not to lie with graphs, is always start with 0 whenever it's reasonable to do that, which is what the next command does. So I'll do Control Enter, go to that. Now the chart starts from 0. There's my competitive sales. This is obviously I've got plenty of data in this particular market. It's not always that way. I know sometimes you only have 3 comps or 1 comp. Okay, let's add a line to that. Oh, wait a minute. That's the prettier graph. You have all kinds of choices of prettier graphs, all done for you. There's the trend line. There's a third order polynomial on top of that. Why is that line dropping down? Well, sure enough, we've got an outlier down here. I would make a phone call or confirm that sale, because once in a great while, this is what really matters to you and your client. And in the class, we spent close to half an hour on one data set and about 10 minutes on that, on handling outliers. And in that particular case, that outlier is the one that saved your butt. It's really kind of a fun example. So let's go on. Now I want to get rid of scientific notation. I want to control Excel dates to R format. That's easy. I want to reduce the CMS down to 1,200 to 1,900 square feet again. I'm going to create a new variable called daily adjustment using a linear model, the formula of which is the sale price varies with the date sale. The squiggle means varies with. It's like regression. So I'll run that line of code. And now I want to see what's in daily adjustment. Excuse me. I'll run it. I'll do a scatter plot. I'll convert the data type for, this is much more complicated. You don't need to know all this. You just run it, but this is to give you a feel for how this goes. Now I want to calculate what's in the daily adjustment for time series. It's going to be an upward trend time adjustment, right? Okay, what's in daily adjustment? Well, the time adjustment is $550 per day. This was at a time when the market was going crazy a few years back. I fell off my chair thinking $550 a day. Well, this is $2 million, $1.5 million properties. The market was going up that dramatically. Now I've got evidence for it and nobody can contradict this. The only way this can be contradicted is challenge my math and my code. Or challenge the data that I selected in the first place. And if you follow what Craig just taught you and the selection methods that we teach in the class, it's bulletproof. It's just basically bulletproof. And I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of appraisals in an office with residential appraisers. They never came back. Let's take a short break, like less than 5 minutes. I've got 12 after. Let's be back at 16 after. It gives you 4 minutes to go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee. And then we'll pick it back up and I will turn it over to Kyle, who will show us how to do this briefly using words instead of all this stuff in Excel or even what I just went through in this code. The code you saw here is as complex as we ever get. And Kyle will show you how to do time adjustment using ChatGPT. Let's see you back here in 4 minutes.
I'm here.
Oh, you scared me. You were 17 seconds late.
I know. Sorry, I was just so excited. You know, just like this dog here, I'm very excited about time adjustments and how we're talking about them. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kyle Paquin. I am a certified residential appraiser in the San Francisco East Bay area. And George and I have had the pleasure of working together for a number of years, as well as many other people on this call who I am indebted to for saving me from the 1004 MC and all of its tyranny. So with that out of the way, we're gonna do something that's gonna make things easy for you. Because when I first learned about these kinds of fun topics about price indexing, I didn't really know how to do any of it. George is really smart. Same with John and a lot of other people on this call. And I'm not super smart. So I needed to lower the bar in order to get me into doing all of this stuff. So what I've done here is I have, in my area, I decided to pull some data from the town I live in. So here's San Francisco down here and Oakland, right? And so I live over here in Benicia, in this neighborhood called Southampton. And so I pulled, a couple of years of sales in here. And this is a tract development that was done up during the 70s, 80s, 90s. And we're going to look at this data through the lens of RStudio. So I'm here in RStudio. Don't pay attention to any of this stuff because it's just setup stuff to make my stuff look nice. And I'm just going to run it real quick. As George mentioned before, there's two things that are drastically important when you're going to figure out a time adjustment. That's when the property sold, what the sales price was. If you have that information, you're pretty much ready to go. Question is, how the heck do you find that information? Well, here's a good little cheat. Put head, and then you put your data set in there, and then you find it. So I have the address, the city, state, and then, oh, there's close date, which in my MLS is the same thing as date of sale, and then sale price right here, SP. So if I find those two things, then now I can actually do a time adjustment, or at least analyze the market in order to come up with one. So the thing is, though, is maybe I don't know how to do all this fancy code. Because, I mean, look at this. That looks complicated. I'm intimidated. I don't know about you. And I'm not a computer programmer. I'm an appraiser. In fact, I don't want to learn how to be a programmer. I don't want to have to learn our code and be as cool as John and walk around and be like, I know how to make code all day long. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use the robot to help me figure that out. But you got to know how to talk to the robot. You got to know how to speak robot-ese. And yes, that's the technical term. The technical term is technically prompt engineering. If anybody has learned about AI tools, you have to talk to the robot in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to copy. This is something I pre-wrote out, and we're going to go to the robot, the infamous ChatGPT, and we're going to ask for some things. Now, I want you to pay attention to this, because how you ask the robot the question determines on how quality your answer is. So what I'm telling the robot is I have a data set. This is the name of the data set. This is what the columns are named. It's sale price and close date. This is exactly the format of those columns that we just saw. I want it to write me some R code that puts it into a scatter plot with trend lines to analyze sale price over time. Got it? Cool. Let's ask the robot and see what it comes up with. All right. Cool. Here's some code. Here's an explanation of every line of that code. And suddenly, we have something to work with. So I'm just going to copy it up here with this handy dandy button that says copy code. Go back to RStudio and plug it in. Now let's see what happens. Oh my gosh, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. We have successfully created a scatter plot with trend lines based upon the data we have. And I still don't know how to code. But I don't have to anymore because the robot can just do it for me. Look at that. Doesn't that look amazing? Kathy, I just saw your comment. Where did this data come from? I said in the beginning, I pulled this data from the MLS in the subdivision that I live in. So this is sale data from my MLS, going back to about 2019 or so. So as we can see, and then we can begin to analyze this thing. Okay, this red dotted line, I don't know why they chose dotted, but sure, is going basically up over time. This green one looks like a polynomial. So it looks like it was kind of flattish and then it started going crazy during the COVID and then maybe leveled out and sort of went down and it's been basically the same ever since. But here's the thing. This is including all of the data in that subdivision. So this has no filters at all. So anything from 1,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet is all included in this graph, which is going to make it pretty crappy for developing competent trends. I mean, you could say generally the market has done this in this neighborhood, but not very well. So we're going to unsuck these trends because they kind of suck. So we're going to continue the conversation with the robot. And it's really easy because when we go back to this conversation that we were just having, we can just continue on with the message, just like we're chatting with a real person. And we can just say, hey, I need to filter this data set. Give me some code that filters the column square foot to values over 2,000. So like, let's say ours is like 2,500 or something like that square feet. And so we want, we don't want anything under 2,000 because, the thing that's 1,000 square feet, that's not relevant for what we're looking for. Let's put that in there. And in basically half a second, we have some filtering code. I'm going to copy that again here. Go back to RStudio and just paste it in. The thing, okay, AD filtered, cool. So we did that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this scatter plot that we had down here. Put it in here and change the name to ADF filtered, because that's what it renamed our filtered stuff from. Goes right there. Hit the button. And boom. We have a slightly more refined version of this. You see lots of dots everywhere. Big spread, lots of heteroskedasticity. Did I get it right, George? Okay. And now we have a slightly better version of that. We can clearly see there's weird outliers going up over here that maybe is pulling that trend line off. But listen, folks, we just did this in like 5 minutes with code that we didn't write through the robot. In fact, we can do other things. What happens if I just start deleting stuff in here? Right, so now this isn't going to work because the code is broken now because I just deleted a whole bunch of stuff. Well, all I got to do is copy this, go back to the robot and say, fix this code. Paste. And it's going to give me exactly what I had before corrected because it knows what it's supposed to look like. And if I put that back in here, ta-da, it works again. Isn't it magical? It's like all I
Yay.
need to do is put the data into the program. And then if I want to do something, I just tell the robot what I want to do. And then suddenly I'm like a genius. I mean, look how beautiful that is. Doesn't that look great? Looks
Kyle,
wonderful.
thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate it. We try to pack so much stuff into this 2 hours, and with Lyle, I appreciate it. I want to give Craig a little bit of time, and I want to give myself a little time to wrap it up. I think most of our people here will hang around after the class a little bit if you have questions. I've seen some incredible, intelligent, and relevant questions on the chat line. We just, we're rushed here. So thank you very much, Kyle. Unless you have a couple of last words, you're okay. All right.
No, I think we're all good. I'll hang out for questions. I see
Okay.
a bunch in the
And
chat, so
Craig,
we'll get there sometime.
yeah, Craig is even harder to keep fast. So Craig, go ahead and do what you wanted to do. And Julius, your turn.
Real quick, can you see this Excel spreadsheet? Is it showing?
Yes.
Yes, Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to this for just a couple of minutes before I move on. One thing that's really important we didn't talk about that we actually need to do and we should be doing, which is removing concessions from the sell price. Now, I know there's some concessions now that are considered broker commissions and so forth. I'm just talking about the theory here. We have to subtract out concessions. That's the sell price we use. I did not do that. Now I'm going to do one more thing, which is real quick with the data that I downloaded. I'm going to do just a real quick chart, as I call it. Okay, there it is. So what I'm showing here is if you do it in Excel, build a template, get one that looks good to you. You like the colors. I want a thick black line for my linear, thick black line for my third order polynomial. I like a nice big number here. This is going up at $89 per day. So I just wanted to show that for those that are going to be using Excel. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is go to AI as soon as I can find it. Actually, let me go to my prompts first. Okay. So you can go into the various artificial intelligence models and ask it to create the prompts for you. As Kyle had it produce the R code that he needed. You can also have it produce Python code if that's what you're using. Those are the two models used most in the AIs, Python and R. And those are the two top ones in the world anyway. So I'm going to show you one here. These are my words. So when you use an AI, I'm going to be doing this in Julius. I also use various others, including ChatGPT, Claude, and so forth. It's good to experiment with each of them if you're going to use it. So this one I did not do to develop code. I just did it to develop a graph without having to touch the data. As George always says, with Excel, we got to touch the data. With R or AI and others like Power BI and so forth, you don't touch the data. So in this one, I want to have my 1 year of data split into 4 pieces. I want to see what happened in the last 12 months, what happened in the last 9 months, what happened in the last 6 months, and what happened in the last 3 months. Because my data are going to fall within generally into one of those tranches. If I've got data from 2 years ago, I would expand this out. So I'm explaining here, I'm spanning 4 different time periods. As George said, always start with 0. If you don't tell it to start with 0, it may start at 300,000 or some other number. The y-axis values are to be displayed as whole dollars with proper formatting, including commas and dollar signs. So I'm putting my words in of what I want to see. I'm not doing any coding here. I want 4 individual regression lines and all must end at the same endpoint, that is, at the same end date and end price. Add a legend for each time period and include the corresponding line colors too. The oldest date used is to be 12 months back from 0, which is today, or whatever date you have. And to display the dates as MM-YY, I don't want to see anything else. That's how I want it displayed. And include all months. Otherwise, you're going to get every other month or every third month or whatever. Make the scatter plot dots blue stars. I can make them black dots, green, whatever. Position the regression equation 5% above the x-axis and aligned horizontally to the left of the chart for better readability. That's so I can read it. Do not interfere with the data points or regression lines. That's with charts and so forth. We don't have anything overlapping anything else. A, line 1, 0 to 3 month period, thick purple line. Add label. Same thing, 0 to 6 months, green line, add a label. It says 0 to 5, but that's actually 0 to 6. And then we have 0 to 9 months, red line, and 0 to 12 months, thick black line. And add a label to them. Include the regression equation for each time period. This is actually code, use paste to combine time period That was something that was added. So let me just put all of this, I'm going to copy and paste it. Oh, one more thing I'll mention. I try to treat AI, whatever I'm using, as a person. It's not a person, but yet it helps. So up here at the top, I may start out in my prompt with, I am a simple-minded real estate appraiser. You are a world-renowned statistician with advanced coursework and a PhD in data science, specializing in residential real estate data analysis. So this would be like George up here, and this and John and so forth. Here's me down here. I uploaded a file comprised of residential home sales for analysis. Follow the following instructions. And then I skipped down to one of them that I had done. Now, let me open Julius. In fact, let me tell you what I'm using. I got Chat, Julius, Perplexity, Claude, Copilot, and Gemini. And I've kind of used all of them. Perplexity doesn't work for this. I do a lot of litigation work. And so some of the other ones work for doing research into cases and so forth, which is really helpful. Don't tell me about the attorneys who had their licenses taken away. It doesn't matter, because they trusted it too far. So let me, so this was one I did earlier. You can see this line here. Can you guys see it actually? Can you see Perplexity? Do I need to add it?
Yeah, we just see your Word document.
Yeah, okay. I'm somewhere else. I'm ahead of myself. Here we go. Okay, you should see Perplexity here. Is that right? Say yes. Anybody? George, check your head. Okay.
Well, we don't know what perplexity.
Yes, we're looking at
But-
Julius
so we don't know
AI.
how to answer that.
Okay, but you do see a graph
Scatter
here.
plot.
Okay, yeah, scatter plot. All right. So you go down here. So I'm in Julius. Open Julius. And by the way, I've got 3 or 4 paid editions of AI. The free ones work fine. Like on Julius, for example, you just run into a limit on how many you can do per day. It may limit you to 10 per day or 20 per day. Otherwise, if you get that limit, you got to start the next day. So anyway, you go down here to the very bottom. This is where the chat goes. Just like with all the others, it's all at the bottom there. And I'm gonna paste that in the from Word. And you see this little paper clip here, the bottom left? That's how you attach a file to do the analysis. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to upload a file. And I'm going to upload price indexing, the one I had done earlier. So I have uploaded the data, and I've put in the instructions. And by the way, once you do the instructions, even with R and all these others, you just save it. You don't have to keep rewriting it. Actually, there's something called iteration. If I don't like something, I'll go in and iterate, and that's where it really comes in handy. Make all the little changes, and then you save the final one. So now I'm going to do a quick run on this data. Not as fast as R. Not even as fast as Excel. But I'm just trying to work with AI as much as I can on different uses, including analytics. Okay. I will create it. Oh, okay. Right here. Oops. So even though I didn't ask it to generate code, it always generates code. I can either get R or Python. I think this is R, if I'm not mistaken. So it's generating the code. It's going through doing the analysis. More code. And again, I can copy and paste this code into R, and then it'd be instantaneous. Okay. Well, I'm going to go up to what it looks like. So there's 4 lines here. You got the black one, the green one, yellow and blue, whatever. But it labels them over here. Remember, I wanted labels 0 to 12, 0 to 9, and so forth. So 0 to 12 months is going up $12 a day. 0 to 9 months at $2 a day. 0 to 6 months at a minus 34. And 0 to 3 months at a minus 500. Now, I didn't remove outliers. There's probably maybe not some outliers here that are affecting that, but you can see the last 3 months where this is really shooting down. If I remove these outliers, it'll probably look more like 0. So this is the part of modeling that we have to understand. And you can actually program in outliers. I didn't do it on this one. Just wanted to show. Okay, so here's the one I just ran live. There it is. And again, the outliers are still in there. We got all the equations down here for all 4 within one. You could also do the 4 separately, but I kind of like having overlaid here. And what I purposely did not do in this was even add a 3rd order polynomial, it just add some confusion. So that's basically some of the things you can do in Julius, but also Chat and Claude and so forth. I suggest anybody want to try any of the AI they haven't downloaded yet, download any of them. Go to the bottom there at the chat, and it's a prompt box, and just type in, I'm a real estate appraiser. Can you do market data analysis? Can you develop metrics? What can you do exactly? Boom, it'll come back. Kind of like with what Kyle did was he put in that he wanted it to to develop R to come up with these results. So, but you talk to it, and you can iterate. Like I said earlier, I'll make changes. Oh, make that line a thick red line instead of thick blue, whatever, and save it. So anyway,
Fantastic, Craig. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But like I said again, if anybody has questions, Craig, will you be able to hang around later on and file?
Oh, I forgot one thing, really important, really important.
Okay.
You'll like that. This is really important for anyone who is either afraid of AI, not sure what to do, not sure how it will help, even besides what we have here. Buy Jim Amarin's book, A Generative Shift, and it's AI for Appraisers. It came out around January or February this year. I bought it immediately, and after I read it the next day, I downloaded AI and started working with it. Otherwise, I'd probably not use it to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. I think having seen what Kyle and Craig just did, you can see how what the theory behind this and the practice and the procedures become more and more important. The human becomes actually more important to engaging this stuff, and you need to less and less about the mechanics of it. Thank you very much, Craig. I want to wrap it up here, and then we will stay after if there's any questions. Let me share my screen. Really want to answer a couple of questions here before we go forward. Then I know some chat I really want to address very briefly. There's a lot of really great questions on there. Somebody asked about, do you need 30 data points? That's only relative to inferential statistics where you take random samples. I know it's what we all learned in high school and college, not relevant to what we're doing here. 8, 10, 12 for a scatter plot is fine. One person said stats and graphs class, took it 4 or 5 years ago, I guess, was over my head. Yeah, the stats, graphs, and data science class covers a lot of ground. There's a lot of new material, new words. Without exception, people have told me that when they take a class a second time, they get much, much more out of it than the first time because it's just so much new material. To that extent, we, of course, offer half price if you take it again within a year. And then if you subscribe to our Asset Analyst magazine report for $200, you get 75% off on all our classes. So we try to help you. And our greatest expense, folks, is the state regulatory fees for classes. We have to get the class approved, the school approved, and instructor approved, and there's a fee, and they're all different. The job that Cindy does, the overhead is just amazing. Another question here, and we do have a class starting next week. The link is on the chat line, or just go back to georgedell.com. We got the class coming up, that's next week. And then next month, we have the Community of Asset Analysts Conference coming up. What date is that? Anybody remember? Was that the 18th and 19th? We're having dinner together in Las Vegas on the evening of the 17th. And then the conference, it's our 4th annual conference of the Community of Asset Analysts, 18th and 19th in Las Vegas. Okay, let me wrap it up here. Okay, going back to this ugly chart, and I'll call it an ugly chart. And I thought to myself, how do I explain this chart in words? And my answer in my head, what this chart tries to explain is at the bottom right, in the red outline, this graph says different sales at different dates give different adjustments. Ta-da! Sorry, I'm a bit cynical, but that's all so graphs can complexify things. That graph lacks some labels, and I found it kind of confusing. Again, it was just to illustrate the point that different sales at different dates give different adjustments, and also that the overall rate that they're asking us to do on the front of the form is different from the rates that you're going to apply to comps. So that's about it. Quick overview, the steps for the data science method, which has really been everything we've talked about here, but specifying on time adjustments. Number 1, you download all the data you think you'll ever need. You don't ever have to want to go back again. It helps you create a data file that you don't have to change again. It's all electronic. Reduce it to the competitive market segment, the CMS. Take that scatter plot and a regression line and adjustment multiplier off the calculation that we did. You've seen it 2 or 3 different ways already just in the last hour or so. The multiplier, remember the graph has time on the x-axis, dollars on the y-axis. So your result is dollars per day. If you insist on creating a percentage, you just divide the overall, you got to figure out how far back you went. It's actually more complex to try to get to a percentage adjustment than just doing dollars per day. $100 a day, 100 days back, you just multiply by 100. Paste that graph and everything else to your URAR. And certainly when the new forms come out, that's going to be even simpler than it is today. Price index. Your expert opinion of what's a good comp would be the first way you'd create your data set. Number 2 is you might want to delimit your competitive sales by features of similarity, stuff you've always done. Living area, 1,200 to 1,900 square feet. Got to be a 3-car garage. Got to have a swimming pool. Whatever your competitive sale, you apply your appraiser brain to get all the data you'll need in your CMS. Apply them, or there's a third method. There's the whole world of data science is replete with these machine learning algorithms of similarity. So much of what's going on in the world right now is all about similarity, matching up the A with B. So each level of accuracy requires different judgment, different tools, but you can just start out with saying, I'm an appraiser, I'm smart, I think these are my best comps. It's kind of crude, but that's where you can start. It's okay, and use these tools. Level 2 judgment is similar to picking comps. I'm setting parameters on my search. But the goal is always to collect the complete competitive market segment, all the sales that compete with the subject property. That's your goal. Price indexing, the goal of data for that. Again, you want to include all the competitive similar sales. If you really only have 4 or 5, that's probably not enough to generate a trend analysis. You want to expand your data set. You might want to go to the next town over or the next neighborhood over for similarities. An example I use in my classes, I appraised a house at top of a mountain peak, a hill peak in San Diego. I hadn't, everything was worse view than going down the hill. I had to go to the next hill over, 3 miles away to match my location adjustment. But now I had a comp at the top of the hill to get to 10 or 12 sales. I can expand by location or living area. It's not directly competitive, but it's indirectly competitive. It's close. Applying the appraiser thinking again. So this data selection provides the best information, and you got a way of explaining how you got the best information, given the reality of we who are boots on the ground out there in the appraisal world. We can do better than the AVMs and the waivers and everything else. USPAP, a quick summary here of the requirements. USPAP requires relevant evidence and logic. In fact, USPAP specifically says you must use all available data. That's standard rule 1-4, and all the data that's relevant. Our education has taught us that local developments are to be considered, not state or national market price and home price indexes. And the GSEs now tell us we got to do it 2 ways, one for the neighborhood and one for the actual competitive market segment. The good news is that'll go away with the new forms, because the front of the form, the neighborhood section, basically will go away. The only reason we really need neighborhoods anymore, neighborhood analysis anymore, is comparing one neighborhood to another neighborhood for a location adjustment. Other than that, I really a blog on that very topic, and my conclusion is we really don't need to analyze neighborhoods in and of themselves anymore. It's only comparing to other neighborhoods. And the FHFA papers basically pointed out, you got to protect yourself against accusations of bias. If you use these data science methods, this is all the data I got. This is everything is available on my MLS. This far back in time, this map. You can't be challenged. Or those decisions are so much hard. You can't be accused of bias. You're appraising to market price, just like the definition of market value is. I believe most misvaluation is systematic. We get blamed for a lot of stuff. Somebody on the chat said, boy, I feel terrible because even this whole webinar is beating up on appraisers. Yeah, well, please don't take me wrong. This is a way out of that loop. It's not your fault. It's systematic. There's internal self-contradictions in USPAP, I believe. There's self-contradictions in the GSE guidelines, but they're subtle. And yeah, we get caught up in them, but it's not our fault. Most of our problems are systematic that go back 20, 30, 40 years ago of failed advancement in the education of appraisers. And there are a whole bunch of us that are willing to say what I just said. It's time for a change. We've got to advance our profession, starting from the education. Now, I'm just going to go through this very quickly. Your report must summarize supporting evidence, describe your data sources, your tools, your techniques, provide both an overall trend and an actual trend path. And it's all effective March 1st, 2025. And let me see what I've got coming up here. I think that's it. Where did I go? I'm going to wrap up with 3 slides here that kind of describe, several of you asked about the class coming. The next version is just next week, folks. 3.5 hours per day, Wednesday, Thursday, 1 week, Wednesday, Thursday, the following week, 14 hours CE. In most states, we can't guarantee your state. That's your job, but you get the certificate. The crux of stats, graphs, and data science is the market analysis approach. Economic models, your appraiser knowledge, and repeatable algorithms, all blended through statistical and critical thinking. creates a much better result. It's a combination of the best of AVMs and the best of appraiser knowledge, competence, and education and thinking. Steps to market price indexing. Download all the data you think you'll ever need. We call that the ADF, the assignment data frame. Once you got that, you never have to go back. That is your work file. You don't have to worry about it. Reduce it to the CMS. Use your judgment. Control it by parameters or similarity matching algorithms in machine learning. We go through that in StatsGraphs data science too. We've touched upon each of those. Expand your sales if absolutely necessary to the optimal information frame, the OIF. We call it the OIF. Graph your scatter plot, your trend line, your dollar per day adjustment. Calculate it for the neighborhood and for your competitive market segment for GSE work. Paste the graph, paste your results, and paste your explanation into the report, or you could have typed it in there in the first place. Last slide. What is stats graphs and data science, or why do we call it that? Data science, the science part of it. What is science? Science is a systematic study by observation or experiment by you, an expert in the scientific method and in the field of study. That's the essence of data science. Data. Data is the source of information. Data is anything that could be measured, counted, or put into sequence, put in order.
They are results.
And somebody's got their microphone on. Okay. Graphs. Graphs provide a visual grasp of markets. It's easy to understand a graph through, a market through a graph. It's almost impossible to visualize a graph, a neighborhood or a market area through a table or just a pile of data. Science combines data, graphs, and science. It's your expert model decisions based on your knowledge. That's going to become more and more important, but for less people. The form fillers are going to be gone 10 years from now, I believe, maybe 5. It's moving so fast right now. Thank you all for being here. I've really enjoyed doing this. It's been nerve-wracking. Cindy says she had heart palpitations trying to organize all the herding the cats here. We had over 1,000 people sign up. Not that many came, but that's normal. Thanks again to Lyle for being here. Thank you, Craig, for doing what you did. John is always a big help. Kyle, thank you for your contribution. I have several friends on here that contribute to the community of asset analysts. I'm sorry I don't have time to acknowledge everybody. Thank you all very much. If you have any suggestions for what we can do in the future, please tell us. And come to the class, come to our conference in Las Vegas. God bless you all. Thank you. We'll hang around here for anything you want. Nobody?
They can't unmute themselves. That's part of it. Let me fix.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Unmute yourself if you want to share.
Okay, everybody can unmute themselves if they want to ask a question.
Hey.
Catherine has her hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering, did somebody say that if we take the class, the code would be included in the class? Or do we have to understand how to do code with RStudio?
I had a little difficulty understanding that question. Did anybody hear it better than I did? It was garbled. I apologize.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, better. Yes.
Yeah. Did somebody say that if we take the class that the code would be included and provided so that we could use it in RStudio, or do we have to understand how to do
Yeah,
code?
the answer is yes. We show you how to download the code, the R RStudio, and the packages. We give you the data sets for the class. And I'll let John answer the rest of the question because John writes a lot of the code that we're sharing. John is a purely 100% residential appraiser and uses RStudio for every appraisal he does, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, so we go into the whole process step by step, what George likes to call we start with kindergarten mode and start with some very, very basic code, get you started, and then get you into the price indexing, and then stats and graphs 2, we go into it a little bit more. But it's definitely a learning process. It's very different from anything else you've done, but it is doable. Kyle showed you how you can have AI help you write code and do it, and Craig showed that as well. But it will get you started in doing it, and having an understanding of the basics will help you use the AI better to get results with it.
Yeah, we actually use the code to help teach the theory as well as the other way around.
Yeah,
That
and
would
we
be
provide
what-
a lot of the code too
Yeah,
that
it's
you
very
can take.
interactive. And it's hands-on. You actually push the buttons and make it work.
Yeah, and
'cause
if
this
you
is
run into
all-
trouble, we have you share your screen and we work it out with you.
Because this is also new to me. I mean, in terms of stats, I mean, I'm not,
Yeah, it's like trying to mist your face with a fire hose, right?
yeah. So I would get something out of it. I'd be able to grasp it, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
do I need some prerequisite knowledge?
No
Okay.
prerequisite.
Okay.
Yeah, taking the class twice, I'm told, is the most valuable thing you can do. The first class, you get an overview and it's still a bit overwhelming, the fire hose effect. Second time, you get into the detail.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you will come out with useful stuff the first time. I guarantee you that. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's incremental. You don't have to bite off the whole chunk. Time adjustments, price indexing, you can apply to however and whatever you do today as
Right.
a chunk. Yeah. And it's going to be a valuable chunk. I see
Okay.
Brad Bassey has a question. Brad, go ahead.
First off, I don't have, let me lower the hand. There we go. Catherine, as far as having to take the class once or twice, yeah, you're going to end up having to take it once or twice. I actually absorb some things and I wear a Stetson. So I'm not exactly the smartest guy on two legs. I can do roping and I can move horses and cows, but I'm not real good at moving data around with code. But I actually, between John Ferris and Bruce Hahn and Kyle and Cody and a few other guys, there's actually, you get some information and some data out of it. So don't get into panic mode. It is something that you should at least experience to get a good understanding of what's out there and what's capable. The other thing I wanted to say, George, now that I've done my $5 plug for you, I wish everybody good success up in Vegas. Wish I could be there. Unfortunately, I will not. But I'm sure you guys can get arrested on your own. Just don't call me for bail money, because Ferris, you're on your own.
All right. Paul Henderson had his hands up, and then after that, David
Hey, George.
and Stephen.
Oh,
Go ahead, Paul.
my question was, did you change your opinion of whether to use the date of closing versus the contract date in the time series analysis?
Oh my gosh, I didn't want to get into it with Lyle.
That's what I thought.
I wrote a paper on that a long time ago. It was about a 7 or 8 page paper. And honestly, when I got done writing that, and I tried to be academic about it, I came to the conclusion that it almost doesn't matter. I think we would be better off using close date sales instead of contract date for time adjustment. In fact, I didn't want to confront Lyle with this, but Fannie Mae guidelines specifically say that the definition of market value requires closed transactions, not gonna be transactions. And things change during escrow, including prices even. So now for the last 30 to 90 days, you're gonna have very little data. Because it's just not there. So my personal preference would be close date. But that's it. I'm gonna hear the confusion in my voice. It's because it's real. I don't think it makes a huge difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Real
you.
quick, I'll add in here. On the relocation side, where accuracy matters, we've always measured from the contract date.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean they haven't closed. They were pending and then they closed. So there's still closed sales. It depends on how quickly the market is changing. If it's flat, it kind of doesn't matter much.
Yeah. It's useful for forecasting. All right, David, you're next. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, first of all, John Ferris, killer beard, and I'm jealous.
Thank you.
But what I want to know, looking at these graphs, I see that it's somewhat linear, and let's say it's going up, and you say, but then the green one, the submarket, seems to sometimes plateau out, go down, go up. And in a place like Chicago, where our markets in the wintertime are pretty slow, I kept hearing you say like $37 a day, increase or something like that. So how does that linear, you know, correlate with a slump or a slowdown in the market when the median price goes down and then comes back up? If your comparable sale occurs in the winter when the prices have dipped, how would you account for that?
Let me answer one point you brought up about seasonality. People make a big deal out of it. And if a sale sold in the winter and now it's a summer, I don't want it adjusted for seasonality. I want to adjust that winter sale price to today. So it actually, that problem ceases to go away.
Wait, you would want to adjust that price that it's sold for in that day to the effective date.
Let me make it simple. Ignore seasonality. If we were
Okay,
looking for fundamental value for a long term, but not market price, yeah, seasonality becomes an issue. For what we do here, ignore it, frankly. George, you can quote George Dell on that.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're better off to ignore it. If you try to adjust for it, you're creating another issue.
So you don't look at the date the comparable was under contract versus the median value of the prices of your subset at that point versus.
Here's that graph. Well, let me back up here. The market went up.
Yeah.
At some point, right along here, it started going down. Well, if you got plenty of data here for comps, you don't want to go back here.
Right. But you have to go to where the contract date is of the comparable
Absolutely.
sale you're using.
Yeah. I mean, this is like 2 years of data right here. This is a long. In the stats and graphs class, I have an extended example of an industrial property where we solve the time adjustment problem back when it was really a big problem. And we do, it's called a spline linear. Basically, we adjust the market up to a certain time point, and then we adjust it down. So it's doing the linear, but we do it twice, up and then down.
Okay.
A great question. Don't have time to answer it here.
Okay, great.
Unless
Thank you very much.
if you got 2 hours right now, I'll do it.
I do.
It'll be $2.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the
Thank
time.
you. All right. Let's see. Lester Kaplan, please. You're next.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. I do market analysis adjustment using Excel right now, and I like R. Looking at it, I like to learn R. But does your class also teach data analysis for other adjustments like living area and site area?
Yes and no. Yes and no. We have one example in there called the Mira Mesa data set where we do a linear regression on living area, but we also recognize that result is biased because it's what's the word? It's collinear with bedroom count. So whatever result you get for living area is also counting in how many bedrooms you have. In fact, it kind of counts in how many garage spaces you got. In fact, it might count in. So how do you separate that? That's honestly, that issue right there is probably what keeps appraisal profession alive, because it cannot be done easily mathematically. It can't. It requires judgment. I hope that answered your question. So that's why I give you a yes and no answer. You will better understand how to deal with the impossibility of the result and better able to write a sentence on why it's impossible to the satisfaction of your reader, I hope.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and if you ask that question during class, we'll certainly devote more time to. We'll try to cut some of that off. I see Stephen was next,
Yeah.
I believe.
Stephen, no last name.
Yes, Stephen, no last name. So I'm going to apologize if I missed this and it was discussed, and I think it kind of is on the coattails of what Lester just brought up. Excuse my crudeness, but a lot of the graphs that I'm seeing that you're running, while I'm buying into it, it appears to be just one form of data. It's time-based per price.
Yes.
But that doesn't take into consideration all the other factors that are on the sales grid.
Excellent
So-
question. Yeah,
So,
let
okay,
me-
so I'm not missing this because I'm in northern New Jersey where most of this was established after World War II and nothing is the same. You can't find match pair sales analysis just does not work here at all. So I'm working on an appraisal right now where my comp values range between 1.4 and 2.1, as crazy as that may sound. But the 1.4 is in a flood zone and also on a main road. And we've also got huge disparities in GLA. And I know your first answer to me is maybe they're not comps. They're my best comps. We just don't have better comps. Otherwise, I'd use them. So when I'm using your grids, no offense, it's only taking into one thing into consideration. My 1.4 could clearly skew a time adjustment, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
The answer is we do that by controlling the data, controlling or moderating for the data. We're getting rid of the outliers. We're getting rid of those areas that are non-competitive. And you got the same problem that we run into with ag type appraisal. The folks in Kansas, the folks, okay, an example, I've taught this class in Eastern Washington State,
right,
which is basically, well, it's rolling hills and all that. But Eastern Washington State has about 12 or 15 small towns of 25 to 100,000 population. And sometimes, oftentimes, their best comp is 22 miles away.
right.
So they got to come up with a location adjustment before they do that.
So I find that like doing time, maybe I'm wrong, is almost double dipping because I'm already taking into consideration, or I have to take into consideration location, GLA, and so many lot size. You know, I'm not in, there's no developments left over here. Everything's been heavily modified. So
my problem with your brain is you're smart and you're going way ahead of the curve.
okay. Don't
Um,
insult me, please, because I'm
it's
desperately
iterative.
trying to find solutions for this, and nothing seems to be making sense, if that makes sense.
In theory, the whole process is iterative. Do you do a
Right.
time adjustment on what's competitive, or do you do a time adjustment on the overall city first in order to get closer to the, it gets very philosophical, so we're trying to be practical.
All right. So bottom line is it wasn't a bad question, and there's really not a clear definitive answer for it.
Yeah, that's it. But
Okay.
doing time adjustment right on the best data you got, if you got 8 or 10 or 12, you're way ahead of the game. That's where I really agree with Kyle.
So it
Kyle.
probably goes back to your neighborhood versus market. Would I almost be better off trying to do, because I consider my market is within inside a town's boundaries. Our towns are 3 to 4 miles. They're small. But you know, to go back to this basic question, people ask you all the time, well, how's the market? My response for the last 20 years has always been, depends on the town, it depends on the price point. Do I do an analysis based on all residential single family homes in that town, or only the comps? But if I only use comps, the data set winds up being very, very small.
Right.
Well, that's the beauty of R, is that you can do both in a matter of seconds.
Yes.
And that's what I do when I get to those neighborhoods that are outside of Bakersfield, where I have a town that's only 20,000 people.
Right.
And when I did that 3,000 square foot house, and that's the only 3,000 square foot house in the town, I'm
Right.
going to run, you know, the closest things that I have to that are similar in size, which were like 2,000 square foot homes, but I'm also going to run the entire city and see what
Okay.
the city's doing as well. And then you reconcile those together to come up with your time adjustment, because you're right. There isn't going to be an easy fix. I'm not going to find another 3,000 square foot sale in the past 5 years because those homes just don't exist.
So by the way, insult me all you want. I'm open for it. But what I've been finding that's been somewhat keeping some of the people at bay is I run a 1004 MC, which I know is not necessarily the right thing to do anymore, for my data set. And then I run a 1004 MC for the entire town. And oftentimes they don't coincide with one another. So then I often make the comment that no time adjustments are warranted because you can't really put a definitive percentage on any of it. It's just really.
So one thing I do when I'm running an entire town like that is that
Right.
instead of looking at sale prices, I'm going to break it down to price per square foot. And I'm going to see what
And
the
then here's
price
our
per square foot is
And then here's
doing.
our next problem. Our MLS does not give the GLA. We have to
calculate
search
it.
that.
You can
First-
calculate it in a matter of seconds if you have the sale price and the living area.
Right, but the GLA is not given to us on our MLS. We have to go to a separate tax form to do it. So it's not as simple as exporting it all out of our MLS.
One of the
I got
things we
multiple
talk,
issues.
one of the things we talk about is how to merge your two databases. There were a couple other hands. I'm sorry, Stephen. You're great stuff. There
All
were
right,
a
listen, I'll let you go. Listen,
Hold
you
on.
answered my question. I'm kind of screwed. So I appreciate your honesty, and I'm just going to do my best to do the best I can. So I appreciate all your help today and your candor. So thanks. You can move on to the next guy.
Your questions absolutely deserve to be. I wish I had you as somebody in the class who would run the rest of literally moderate the whole class. We could answer your questions. It would be the Socratic approach to learning, which is the most powerful method of learning.
Right.
Unfortunately, you can't do that. So you're it. In the next class, you're the Socratic monitor. You're in charge.
I appreciate, guys. Have a great day. Take
Hey,
care.
Stephen,
There were some other hands I saw, but did they go away already?
Steve Smith still has his up.
Okay, Steve Smith.
I have a suggestion for Stephen that
Well, he went away already, unfortunately. So
I'm here.
He's still
oh,
here.
you're there. Okay.
I'm here.
So
have you considered adjusting your 1.4 for location first?
Well, that was kind of my question. Sometimes like so I have a friend of mine that suggests he goes after the adjustment he feels is the easiest, and then he saves the hardest for last, and then tries to go with adjusted values over unadjusted values.
that's
And I'm
okay.
not saying that he's wrong, but again, I don't know, like God forbid, the thing we never want to say is I find myself in front of a judge. Is that going to fly?
yes.
You know?
Maybe.
I do almost nothing but litigation. It's about
Okay.
75% of my work. Don't worry about the judge.
You're
the expert.
Yeah.
Well, I just find that right now they're questioning our expertise and a lot of what we do. I mean, listen, face it, the definition of an appraisal is an opinion of value. A lot of that opinion can't necessarily be substantiated through charts and graphs. I know you can argue that, but it's a lot of times the data's in front of you and you can see where the adjustment is, but you can't explain it.
I
So,
think some of the answer is in the verification process. And at the other point, the reason I raised my hand is what date do you use? I have a current transaction that was signed over Thanksgiving weekend, but by the time all the inspections got done, it was the beginning of January, and the sale price is just now being renegotiated because of the inspections. So knowing when the last negotiation is an important thing, because the sales price can be reduced while it's in escrow because of inspections.
All right, we have one more hand up, Gary.
Yeah, I don't know if this helps everybody, but just a reminder in terms of from appraisal theory and practice, right? You're supposed to make the time adjustments to your sales first thing, right? And that time adjustment is mentioned here is the time value of money difference, and then what's going on in your market. It's two pieces, but most people in economic theory and practice and everything they read in the paper, right? The cost of money continues to go up, right? So if you say that the data is spurious or gives you bad info, then that opens the idea that you're not using economic theory or practice, and you're ignoring the initial first step, and any adjustments you make after that may be tainted by the fact that you didn't make the adjustments for the differences in time and value of money. And so that's the way to kind of look at it. I think presumably George and his theory and practice in the class shows that, and that's the first thing, right, to do is use the data that's available to try and come up with the time adjustments, and then based on the time adjustments, and you make each sale, you're bringing them up level to today's time frame, and that's when you start looking at, once you've made the adjustment for time and the concessions, you brought it to cash equivalency, then you start looking at how to make the adjustments. And that's where the opinion, the experience of the appraiser really comes into, the forefront. So
Agreed.
maybe oversimplifying things, but to me, that's how I sort of keep it towards the front of my brain, and why there's this push to get us to make these time adjustments, because that's bringing us back to theory and practice and the science of appraising.
That's right on. Thank you,
And
Gary.
the first adjustment is concessions, not time.
Understood.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Please tell your friends and neighbors how wonderful this was. We really appreciate it. We don't make any money on this. The only money we make is occasional TAR subscription for $200, but then you get that money back on classes, and classes just enough to pay for the state fees and dues and all that. The administrative cost is really terrible. Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks again, guys. Great
See you
sessions.
next time.
We have another question.
Oh. Oh, Gene. Okay. Gene, make it quick.
I'm so sorry for the very, very last minute question, but
Okay.
I've just been trying to fool around a little bit with RStudio on my own to get an idea of how to use it. Not quite there, so I'll probably take the class, but I did have a question because I use Total for my appraisals, and does Titan Analytics do anything like this, what you're talking about?
It can do some calculate time adjustments for you. So it does produce graphs. I mean, when I do lender work and they require 1004MC, I export from RStudio after I've done my analysis a comparables data set and then a neighborhood data set, and dump that into Titan Analytics to produce some graphs and fill out the 1004MC. But it's much easier to do in R than it is
It
to go.
is, okay.
Yeah, just because of the way they have it formatted in there, you're limited on what you can do. Whereas in RStudio,
Yeah, I've only fooled around with it a little bit and wasn't super intuitive on, maybe it was just the tutorial I was using wasn't, really set up for what I was trying to do, but it wasn't, simple. But I don't find this to be simple either, but I do get it. So I'll probably take the class, try to understand it a little bit better.
yeah,
Glad to see you there.
it's
Thank
more
you.
difficult than using Titan Analytics, but you can customize it to what you want, what you need, not what they
Right.
offer.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for all the time today from everyone.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Take care.
Uh-oh,
Have a good
Paul
evening.
Rayburn raised his hand.
Oh, no, not Paul.
We're going to be here for 45 minutes now.
Paul is one of our greatest contributors from Canada. I taught in where was it? Yeah.
Winnipeg.
Paul, did you have a
Oh,
question?
you need to unmute yourself.
Paul?
I thought it was in BC.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's in DC.
Oh, there he is.
That's the new recreation park they have in British
Paul is
Columbia.
very active, does a whole lot of
Oh, you're
stuff.
still muted.
Yeah.
Well, Paul's muted, not talking to anybody. I'll just mention.
There we go.
Oh, he
He's
came up.
Okay, Paul. No, your microphone's not working, buddy.
Okay, Craig, talk.
Real quick. Nobody should be using a 1004MC ever. It was retired in 2018 by the GSEs because they have no faith in it.
Correct.
So-
But some banks still require it, in which case you must use it.
VA still asks for it?
Nope.
Good.
But some individual lenders will still require it.
Do they know why they require it?
Probably not, but
inertia, habit.
Wells Fargo still requires it.
It's much more important to look like you're doing something than actually do it well.
Those become prior clients to me.
Okay, Paul, do we have sound?
Nope.
nope.
No.
Well, doggone it.
Can you type your question really
Yeah,
fast?
type your
in the chat?
question or comment, Paul.
Good idea. In the chat?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think he's,
looks like he's going for it.
yeah.
Is that the real Paul or is that an AI Paul? That might not be the real Paul.
I don't know. The hair's a little different, and so are the glasses. I'm not
Could be-
sure.
Yeah. Notice his hair is a little different than it's been in the past. Maybe it's bad AI.
And I've never seen a palm tree in BC before.
There's something that's
He's so
not
funny.
credible about this.
Hey, does your phone work? Give me a call and I'll put you on speaker for the group.
Oh my God. Okay, those of you that want to hang out,
Here, write it out on a big whiteboard.
you're welcome to.
I turned off the whiteboard.
We still got about 20 people on the call here, so.
I'm 112.
112.
If that was
Oh.
AI, Paul, there he'd have 3 ears.
This is true. This is true. Come on, Paul, give me a call.
If it was AI, he'd definitely be very shiny. Hey, there's Gary, live and in person.
Paul, are you calling Cindy?
He hasn't so far.
Hey, come on, Paul. We need that Canadian accent, eh?
Eh?
Hey,
Here it is. Oops, it went away. It was in the chat.
That Steven, can you plot out several neighborhoods for like 10 years on the same plot? Let's see. Not be answering that.
Paul's saying goodbye.
Sorry, Paul. It took so long to get that out there. You left.
Paul will be in Las Vegas with us next month, and you can ask him then.
yes, Paul will be there.
Here.
Yep, Paul will be
All right.
live in conference.
Okay, the rest of you go home.
Unless you have more questions. Now's the time.
Last chance.
All right, everyone's checking out.
All right.
y'all later.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys later.
See you
All right,
next
see
week.
Next week. Sign up. See you next week.
First of all, to Cindy. Thanks, Cindy.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Nobody really knows what you go through putting this together. It's a lot of work.
Thank you.